chest see, stens, corpo di baraggio. You spoof of visibility in a freak fog, of mixed sex cases among goats, hill cat and plain mousy, bigamy Bob and his old Shenvocht. The Blackfriars treacle plaster outrage belittled. Therewith was released in that king's rig of Humidia a poisoning volume of cloud-barrage indeed. Yet all they who heard or redelivered are now with that family of bards, and Vergobritas himself, and the crowd of Caraculacticors, as much no more as be they not yet now, or had they then not ever been. Can be in some future, we shall presently hear, amid those suave players of Incamen, the mime mumming the Mick, and his Nick miming their Maggies, Hilton St. Just, Mr. Frank Smith, Ivan St. Ostel, Mr. J. F. Jones, Coleman of Lucan taken 4 parts, a choir of the O'Daly O'Doyles double-sixing the chorus in Fan McCall and the Servant Fieries of Loch Nish, Gallopatroples and Hurley Quinn, and the Citherer of the Past with his merrymen all, zim zim, zim zim. Of the Pearsons in this era Wigla saga, which, though readable to end from end, is from top to bottom all false tissues, anti-libelous and non-actionable, and this applies to its whole volume. Poor Osti Fosti, described as quite a musical genius in a small way, and the owner of an exceedingly nice ear, with a tenorist voice to match, not alone, but a very major poet of the poorly meritary order. He began Twanisonian, but worked his passage up as far as the we all hang together any Mandovites. No end is known. If they whistled him before he had curtains up, they are whistling him still after his curtains doom's doom. A foo. His husband, poor old Ahara, Okarov, crestfallen by things, and down at heels at the time they squeak, accepted the Sasnoch Adris shilling at the conclusion of the Crimean War, and, having flown his wild geese, alone in crowds to wander on like Shuli Looney, enlisted in Tyrone's horse, the Irish Whites, and soldiered a bit with Wolsey under the assumed name of Blanco Fusilnova Baklovich, spurious, after which the corps and the marble halls of Pump Court Columbarium, the home of the old sea kings, looked upon each other and quest their haven evermore. For it transpires that on the other side of the water it came about that on the field of Vasilev's Cornix inauspiciously with his unit he perished, saying, "This paper leafless to old chap give, raw chocolates for mother in louth." Poor old dear Paul Horan, to satisfy his literary as well as his criminal aspirations, at the suggestion thrown out by the Doomster in loquacity, so says the Dublin Intelligence, was thrown into a Ridley's for inmates in the northern counties. Under the name of Orani, he may have been the utility man of the troop, capable of sustaining long parts at short notice. He was. Sordid Sam, a dour decent debonair, haunted always by his ham, at a word from Israfel the summoner, passed away painlessly after life's ups and downs one Halloween night, ebrus and in a state of nature, propelled from the unwashed behind into the unwished beyond, by foot blows Colin clouted upon his oyster and atlas, on behanged and behooved and behicked and behulked of his last fish and blood-bad scrappers, a Norwegian and his mate of the shavolving class. Though the last straw glimpsed his bearing, this stage Thunkard is said, the pit-fallen gagged him as prompt boxer, to have soul-manly said, as had the brief thought but fell into his head, like a bass dropped neck fast into a bunk crate, cogged, Me dreams, O lovelands, has come through. Now let the centuple selves of my ego urge, as Michaelas the Cusack calls them, and of all of whose I, in my hereinafter, of course, by recourse demission me, by the coincidence of their contraries, re-amalgamurge in that identity of undiscernibles, where the Baxters and the Fleshmans may they cease to be Divalons, and, but at this point, though the iron thrust of his cockspurred start might have prepared us, we are well nigh stink-pottered by the mustard punch in the tail end. This out and in brown candlestock melt Nolans into peace. Han var. Disliker as he was to Drurio-drama, her wife Langley, the prophet, and the decentest dozenest short of a Frosker, whoever stuck his spickle through his spoke, disappeared. In which to-doing he has taken all the French leaves unbailable out of Callum Quiller's privateers. From the sourfess of this earth, that austral plane he had transmarried himself to, so entirely spurelessly, the mother of the book, with a dust whisk, tabularizing his obliterature done upon her involucrum, as to tickle the speculative to all but opine, since the levy, who might have been Langley, may have really been a redivivus of paganism or a volunteer of Austin, that the hobo, who possessed a large amount of the humoresque, had transtuled his funster's habitat to its finsterest and terrymost. Be she. Again, if Father Dan Brown, tea and toaster to the quaintestest of yarn spinners, is Padre Don Bruno, Troy and troaster to the Queen of Yar Spain, was the Reverend, the sodality director, that eupeptic vice-flayer, a bare-faced Carmelite to whose palpitating pulpit, which of us but remembers the rare valiant and honourable Fretto Mr. Norlandmore and Braun, sinning society's sirens, see the Roman Catholic Press Passim, fortunately became so enthusiastically attached and was an objectionable ass who very occasionally cockaded a raffles ticket on his hat, which he wore all to one side like the handle of his pen. If her elegance saw him, she'd have the canary, and was semi-privately convicted of malpractices with his hot-wash table knife, glossing over the cark in his pocket. That same snob of the Dunhill, fully several yearshorms riper, encountered by the General on that red-letter morning or May-noon Jove's Day? Were they? Fuit, fuit. When Fished and Phil once throws his lip, 'tis folly to be fortune-flouting, and whoever's gone to Mick's hotel by the salt sea-water, there's next to nothing we can do, for he's never again to see. It is nebulous an autodidact fact of the most common-faced experience that the shape of the average human cloudifice, whereas sallow has long days faded, frequently altered its ego with the passing of the showers. Not original. Whence it is a slipperish matter, given the wet and low visibility, since in this skirts the rate of 1001 nightinesses, that sort of certainty, which would identify the body, never falls. To identify the individuum in scratch wig, square cuts, stock, lavalier, regattable oxeter, baggy pants and shufflers, he is often alluded to as Sly Patrick, the lad in a lane, with already an incipient lust in the direction of area baldness. One is continually first meeting with odd sorts of others at all sorts of ages. Who was asked, by 3 board school shirkers in drenched coats over a wall, Will, Con, and Otto, to tell them over a gate, Vol, Pov, and Dev, that Fisherbed Goat's story of the hardly creditable adventurers of the haberdasher, the 2 churchies, and the 3 ankle chums in their bearskin goats. Girls and youngers, but he has changed a lot since Thorkel's time. Ja, da, tra, gathery, pimp, chassis, Josaphat, okedoboko, nine. Those many wards, those slummy patches, half-sinister wrinkles. What has come over the face on whole broader E? And, shrine of Mount Mew, save us! The large fungo park he has grown. Drink! Sport's a common thing. It was the Lord's own day for damp. To wait for postponed regattas eventualizing is not of battlecock, shuttle or juxtamare only, and the request for a fully armed explanation was put, in lieu of Pat, to the porty, a native of the sister isle, Meathman or Mackan, by his broke, X-rays eyes, local colour and local odour, which are said to have been average clown Turkish, though the capitalists voiced nasal liquids and the way he sneezed at Z's haul us back to the crowks and brins of the Silurian orifices, who, the lesser pilgrimage accomplished, had made pets and pigs older insert, the southeast bluffs of the stranger steppe shore, a regifugium persecutorum, hence hindquarters. As he paused, at eventime, for some or so minutes, "Hit the pipe, Danny boy. Time to one, barman. I'll take 10 to win." Amid the devil's one doldrum, apples by her blossom window, and Charlotte's at her tospanomancy, his soul admirers, his only tears in store, for a fragrant calabash during his weekend pastime of executing, with any Oakley deadliness, the consumatory pairs of provocatives, of which remained provokingly but two, the ones he fell for, Lily and Tutu, Corkum, MTs, which had not very long before contained Reed's family. You rued that before, Soki, but all the bottles in sodomed history will not soften your bloodthirst. Stout. Having reprimed his repeater and recite-roomed his time's piece, his revenants, with still alive for two to spare for the space of his occupancy of a world at a time, rose to his feet, and there, far from Tolkaheim, in a quiet English garden, commonplace, since known as Whittington Wild, where the joy shots rang no more, his simple, intensive, querulent vocality, "My dear brothers, my most dear brothers," as he, so is a supper as is a sipper, spake of the one and told of the compassionate, called up, before the triad of precocious scare-makers, score-taking, "Spegulo ne helpas al mal belulo, mi credas que vi estas prava, via dote la visago," respondas fraulino. The now, to us here, mythical habiliments of our Far and Arthur of our Doin. Television kills telephony in Brothers Broil. Our eyes demand their turn. Let there be seen. And wolfbone balefires blaze the trail most, if only that merry nothing may burst her bibi bakshi. When they set fire, then she's got to glow, so we may stand some chances of warming to what every Surkabacha, Tum or Hum, would like to know. The first Humphreys latitudinous beaver with puggery behind. Calaboose belong Big Boss, belong Kang the Tall, his four-in-hand bow, his albarum surtout, the refaced unmentionables of ginger in hue, the vertebrated slate umbrella, his gruff Wolseley Wellesley with the Findrinny Knopfs, and the gauntlet upon the hand, which in an hour not for him solely evil, had struck down the mighty might have been Destair, of whom his nation seemed almost already to be about to have need. Then, stealing his thunder, but in the befitting legumena of the smaller country, probable words, possibly said, of field family gleaning, a bit duskish and flavoured with a smile, seeing as how his thoughts consisted chiefly of the Cheerio, he aptly sketched for our soon-to-be second parents, Sukan si Weibe, the touching scene. the solace of that stilling. Here one might a fin fell, booms the rombombonant. It seems like a landscape from Wildo Pittorescu, or some seam some dim eras, dumb as mum's mutinous. This mimage of the 77th cousin of Christensen is audible to us across the windless air, no older, nor more eerie, nor less potent of suggestion than in the tales of the Ting Mount. Pricked. And there, oft after, jaunty jogging on an Irish vis-a-vis, in steadily with shoulder to shoulder, Jehu will tell to Christian ear, saint to sage, the Humphreyet of that fall and rise, while Daisy winks at her pinker sister among the tussocks, and the couple between the shafts mocks the couple on the car. And as your who may look like how, on the other side of his big belt, try your tears and close your nose, and paradigm may rearise in Aaron. Follow we up his whip vindicative. Thurnston's, lo be bold. La Arboro, lo Petruso. The Augustan, peace be to them oaks. The monolith rising stark from the moonlit pine barren, in all fortitudinous Ajaxius rowdy noisy tenuosity. The angelus hour with ditchers bent upon their farm utensiles. The soft belling of the fallow deers, Dorimos genuine, advertising their milky approach as midnight was striking the hours. Litate. And how brightly the great tribune outed the sharkskin smoke wallet, imitation, from his frock, kippers, and, by Joshua, he tips on a topping swank cheroot. None of you Swedish soid, quite the reverse. And how manfully he says, pluck to pluck and leakin for lukin. He was to just pluggy well suck that brown boyo, my son, and spend a whole half hour in Havana. Sora of the Creeksman, would not Thor be old high Gosbroke? Wherefore he met master, he mean to say, he do, sire, best of Republicans, at Eaglecock Hostel on Lorenzo Tooley Street, and how he wished his honor the Bannocks of Gort and Moria and Breehead and Puddyrick, your lordship, and a starch box sitting in the pit of his St. Tomix. A strange wish for you, my friend, and it would poleaxe your son's grandson utterly, though your own old sweat and swerve Lorerons heaved it hoch as many as the times, when they were terrified be the hits. Cheers for up King Billy, and crow Cromwell's Downaboo. Hop boys and hat him. See? I'll beam there lost, we found remembrances. Their hours to date link these airs to morrow, but where are those yours of yesterday's? Far-seeing Etheridge and pole old woman, character cuss and his Enban booked. D-E-E-D? Adnet, ended or sleeping soundlessly? Favor with your tongues. Intendite. Any dog's life you list, you may still hear them at it, like 6s and 70s, as ever sure as Halley's comet. Ulema men, Sobranji women, Storthing boys and Duma girls, as they pass its bleak and bronze portal of your Casa Concordia. Huru morni, minifricans? Whardelis hardy dead? Lost door on left milady's queue? 1132 scudi? Tipoti, Kyrie, tipoti. Chakai roti kai makar sahib? Dispense me usted, señor, en son suco, sabes? Osabro norm acathraige, thinking thou gaily? Lick pa fly high pa lisi lang lang? Et puis alors, écoute Baptiste, tu vas venir dans le petit point coin. Ismena de Bumba gemeyas de Portacayu. Oh, Os pipos míos es demasiado grosso por o piccolo poquino. Wifi, duro. Koshis, Shabbat, mercy, and you? Gomach, Thag. And, God, says he with mugger's ears in his eyes, would you care to know the priest of Eliar? Magus, nick your nighty novel. Mass taverners at the mic again, and that back belly is the buck to goat it. Megek, McGay, chappy. I call our universe to witness. As sicker as moileafy eggs is known by our good householders from your hundreds of mammoths to be which they commercially are, in ahoy high British quarters, conventional, my guest house and cow handle credits will immediately stand open, as straight as that neighboring monument's fabrication before the hygienical. This was where the Reverend Sabbath and Bottle Breaker, with fur-borg force-stretched, touched upon his tricolored boater, which he uplifted by its pickled hoopy. He gave Stetson's 1 and a penny for it, while as oleaginosity of ancestral orosis scodulated down the both pendencies of his Mutsuhito lip-tails. Sen Capitulo, a more modestuous conciliabulite, never curled a torn pocket-mouth, cordially inviting the adolescents he was wising up to do in like manner what all did, so as he was able to add. Lobe, before the great schoolmasters. I tell you no story. Smile. The house of Atreus is fallen in the dust. Iliam, meromor monomatis. Emerging on blight like the mundane banks of Fenjana, but deeds bounds going arise again. Life, he himself said once, his biography, in fact, kills him very soon, if yet not after, is awake, livid or cricket, and on the bunk of our breadwinning lies the crops of our seed father. A phrase which the establisher of the world by law might preternately write across the chest front of all men or women born. The scene, refreshed, re-roused, was never to be forgotten, the hen and crusader ever inter mutuo emergent. For later in the century, one of that prisoner band of fact ferreters, then an ex-civil, out of the custom huts, retired, hurt, under the 65's Act, in a dressy black modern style, and we were shiny tan Burlingtons, Tam, Humph, and Dicky, Quapricos and Piact, rehearsed it, Pippa pointing, with a dignified bow, copied, to a name cousin of the late Archdeacon F.X. Preserved Coppinger. A hot fellow in his night, may the mouther of the guard have mastic on him. In a pool woman of our first trans-Hibernian overground, with one still sadder circumstance, which is a dirk and dirk heart skewerer, if ever to bring bounce-eye brimmers from marbled eyes. Cycloptically through the window discs, and with eddying oars, the round eyes of the rundreisers, back to back, buck to bucker, on their airish chaunting car, beheld with interesting interestedness the clad pursue the bear, the green, the frore, the clad again, as their convoy wheeled encirclingly about the gigantic live tree, our fire-leaved lover-lucky blomsterbaum, phoenix in our woodlessness, haughty, cacuminal, erubescent, repetition, whose roots they be ashes with lustres of pains. For as often as the archicadonus, pleasing aside his Irish field, and craving their auriculars to receptacle particulars before they got the bump at Castlebar, met and far, spoke of it by request, all, hearing in this new reading of the part, whereby, because of Dies Inus Machina, the new Garrickson's grimacing grimaldism hypostasized by substitution the axiomatic rotundity of that once grand old Elrington ball, The copycast's description of that fellow commuter's play upon countenance could simply imagine themselves, in their bosom's inmost core, as pro tem locum time sported across the yawning abyss, as once they were, seasiders listening to the cockshy shooter's evensong evocation of the doomed but always ventriloquent agitator. No, not more plank or pound the billows overthrown of Valhalla reef. Silhouetted, a walrus mighty add, against the dusk of Scumring. Would that fain be St. Muizin's Colin, holy places, and this fast brimless as brow of faithful toucher of the ground did wish it were, blessed be the bones, the ghazi power of his sword. His manslayer's gun-wielder protended towards that overgrown lead pencil which was soon, monumentally at least, to rise as Molifto-Condylon, to be his mausoleum. Oden stood till stained Maisie's eyes could show upon, while all over his exculpatory features, as Roland rung, a wee dropine of grief about to silonize his jou, the ghost of resignation diffused a spectral appealingness, as a young man's drum over the fate of his waters may gloat, similar in origin and accurate in effect to a beam of sunshine upon a coffin plate. Not otherwise, in the days of the beginning, would our traveller, remote, unfriended, from Van Diemen's land, some lazy scald or maundering poet, lift weary-willy his slow-cut, snob-sick eyes to the semi-signs of his zodiac, and, lengthily lingering along flask neck, cracked cup, downtrodden brogue, turf-sod, wild broom, cabbage-blades, stockfish, longingly learn that there at the Angel were herberged for him poteen and tea and praties and baccy and wine with woman words warbling, and informally quasi begin to press a smile to Quisithin. Nonsense. There was not very much windy new blowing at the given moment through the head of Mr. Melancholy Slow. But in the pragma, and by laws of casualty, what formal cause made us smile of that to think? Who, under ye great bow of heaven, was he to whom? O'Brien's not his name, nor the brown one his maid. Whose, in thunder and wedding and sudden and order, are the place-wares? Kiswasti, Kiska, Kitha, Kitnabucha. Tell the tem of the tumulum. Give the gav of the groob. Be it cudgel player's country, or fishfellow's town, or leak-licker's land, or poor Penungo Povengreske. What Regnans raised, the rains have levelled, but we hear the pointers, and can gauge their compass, for the melos yields the mode, and the mode the manners. Pleisimen, plausimen, plausimen, plab. Sin, 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 sin. The forefather focus for a price of 2 peaches with Ming, Ching, and Chani on the lie low lee. We'll sit down on the hope of the goody ghost, for the tithman troubleth, but his hantitat is not here. They answer from their zones. Hear the 4 of them. Hark to roar of them. I, says Amach, and am proud of it. I, says Clonakilty, God help us. I, says Dean's Grange, and say nothing. I, says Barna, and what about it? Hee-haw! Before he fell hill, he filled heaven. A stream, outlapping streamlet, coily coildom, cool of her curls. We were but thermites then, we. Our ant-heap we sensed as an hill of Allen, the barrow for an people, one Jotnius fell. And it was a grummelang among the pork troop, that wonder struck us as thunder yonder. Thus the unfacts, did we possess them, are too imprecisely few to warrant our certitude. The evidence givers by Legpaul too untrustworthily irreparable, where his adjudgers are seemingly freak threes, but his judicandes plainly minus twos. Nevertheless, Madam's two showers waxes largely more lifelike. Entrance, 1 kudos, exits, 3. And our notional gallery is now completely complacent, an exegious monument, airily perennious. Oblige with your blackthorns, Gamps de grace. And there, many have paused before that exposure of him by old Tom Quad, a flashback in which he sits sated, gowned about, in clericalese habit, watching bland Saul slithe dodgesomely into the nethermore, a globule of mortalness about to corrugitate his mild-dewed cheek, and the tartar of a tiny Victorienne, Alice, pressed by his limper looser. Yet certes one is. Ere the following winter had overed the pages of nature's book, and till Ciadurba Atacleac became Dablina Tertia, the shadow of the huge outlander, Maladic, Maltwald, Magnoporus, had bulked at the bar of a rota of tribunals, in manor hall as in thieves' kitchen, mid pillow talk and chit-house chat, on Marlborough Green as through Molesworth fields, here sentenced pro-tried with Jedburgh justice, there acquitted con testimony with benefit of clergy. His thingmod have undone him, and his mad thing has done him man. His beneficiaries are legion, they number up his years. Great Wheel Dunlop was the name was on him in the part he created. Behung, all we are his bicycles. As holiday in his house, so was he priest and king to that. Alvi came, envy saw, ivy conquered. Lou, Lou. They have waved his green boughs over him as they have torn him limb from limb. For his mortification and expiration and damnation and annihilation. With shries and grida, de profound suspire. Steady, Sullivans! Mannikins, pause! Long Tongue's breech is fallen down, but Gronia's spreads abroad. Atu stay, fideli ones, and feel the fluchos balls. For the total of your flout is not fit to fen his fettle o. Have a ring and sing wool. Chin chin, chin chin. And of the chorus, all chimed in with the utmost joviality, swiping rums and bones and cherries and ciders and negos and citronates too. The strongers? Oh, Master Bag, you're about to be bagged in the bog again. Bog. But soft seas sighed. Ahoy, forgesses. But lo, by the threatening gods, human, erring and condonable, what the statues of our quo, who is the mischief be our quang? As sure there, the unforgettable tree shade looms up behind the jostling judgments of those, as all should owe, mal-recapturable days. Tap and pat and tap-pat again. Fire first shot, messieurs the refuseliers. Pyong pyong, for Saxon Luti! 3 Tomics, soldiers free, Cockaleek and Capapee, of the Coldstream Guards, were walking in, pardonnez-leur, je vous en prie, Montgomery Street. One voiced an opinion in which, on either side, pardonnez, nodding, all the Finnegans concurred. Je vous en prie, It was the first woman, they said, souped him that fatal Wells Day, Lily Coningham's, by suggesting him they go in a field. Roth mod eld far, Roth red still stand, wrath, rugged, wrath, confessed Private Pat Marchinson retro. Terrors. Thus, contenters with centoys play. One of our coming Vauxhall on the boards, who is resting for the moment, she has been called by a noted stagey elocutioner a waist-packet sittance, was interviewed in a waste-end beauty parlour. Looking perhaps even more beauty-flushed in her cherry-dairy padoisoise, girdle and braces by the half-moon and 7 stars, russets from Blackamoor's Head, amongst the climbing boys at his eagle and child, and over the corn and hay empters at their black and all black, Mrs. F.A. set aside, half in stage of whisper to her confidant Glass, while recuperating her cartwheel chapeau. A hat! Now we know what thimbles and buckets on Lallans or Talls mean. She hoped Sid Arthur would get a Christmas portrait of orange and lemon-sized orchids, with holics and ether, from the theatre of the Innocent, as the world had been uncaned. Then, while it is odorous comparisoning to the sprang flowers of his birthday, which was a veritable godin body for the rainworms and the gelatinas and all branches of climatitis, it has been such a wonderful noise entirely, added she, with many regards to Maha's branch-pansies. Tart. Prehistoric, orbited to his dictaphone and anti-ecologist. His propenomen is a properismenon. A dustman, knock-named 7 churches, in the employ of Messrs. Ashburn, Salpeter, and Ash Reborn, Pre-Americas, Glinterlock, was asked by the sisterhood the vexed question during his midday collation of liver and buckram, alternatively with stank and kidney pie in a hash house, and, thank heaven, responded impulsively, "We have just been propagandering his nullity suit, and what they took out of his ear among my own crush. All our fellows at OD stages with Aratar Kalaman, he is a cemented brick, bucket all." A more nor usually sober car driver, who was jauntingly hosing his runabout, Ginger Jane, took a strong view. Laurie hosed her as he talked, and this is what he told Rewrite Man. "Irewaker is just a plain pink joint reformee in private life, but folks all have it by Bohemian's laws he has parliamentary honors." Ice Caffier said, "Luigi's, you know that man's brillant savourin." "Mon foi, you wish to have some omelette, yes, lady? Good, mein Lieber. Your egg he must break himself. See, I crack, so he sit in the poêle, unbedimmt." A perspirer, over 60, who was keeping up his tennises, panted. He knew how hard 'twas to collect information but a differ flanners, climb wall and trespassing on doorbell. After full-blown Braddon, hear this fresky trotterella. A railway's barmaid's view, they call her Spilteer's Rue, was thus expressed to sympathizers of the Dole Line, Death Avenue, and those objects of her pity-prompted ministrants, to wet man and his siphon. A hymn. It is ever too late to whistle when Phyllis floods her stable. It would be a scarlet shame to jail him and lock up, as was proposed to him by the Saddams creature. What matter what Veritrix went off with his revolver her, in connections with him being an orphan and enjoining such wicked ills, him? "Well done, Drum Collarkill. Kitty Tyrell is proud of you," was the reply of a BOT official. Oh, blame not the board. While the daughter's bank letter murmured in uniswoon, "Call for Gil his jury legs." Brian Linsky, the cop cursor, was questioned at his shouting box, ball on a bracket, and gave a snappy comeback when saying, "Poh! Once more I'll hell howl. I am 4 caveman chase and Sahara sex, burk you. Them 2 bitches ought to be leashed, can 'em. Up hog and whore hunt, poh!" A would-be martyr, who is attending on St. Esitas, where he's being taught to wear bracelets, when grilled on the point, revealed the undoubted fact that the consequence would be that so long as Sankhya Mundi played his mango tricks under the missile tree, with shady Apsaras sheltering in his leaves license, and his shadowers torrified by the potent bolts of interdictions, there would be fights all over Cuxhaven. Tosh! Missioner Ida Wombwell, the 17-year-old revivalist, said concerning the coincidence of interfizzing with grenadines and other respectable and disgusted Pearsons using the park, "That perpendicular person is a brew, but a magnificent brew." Caligula, Mr. Daniel Magrath, bookmaker, well known to Australian perusers of the Sydney Parade Bulletin, was, as usual, antipodal with his "striving to die, hoping to mellow, wear a splash, cobbler." "We have meat too hourly," sang out L. Kaplan Bycoat, with the famous Pedros Tirridos Cape cast. "Meat too hourly, matter dear." Dan Michael John, presenter of SS Smack and Ollies, was probably verbal with his Upsiduxit. Mutatus mutandus. Doran's Lord, Sniffbox, and Morrigan's Lady, Flatterfun, took sides and crossed and bowed to each other's views and recrossed themselves. "The dirty dubs up in their flies went too free," echoed the dainty drabs down in their sanities, una mona. Sylvia Silence, the girl detective, me Minerva, but by now one hears turtlings all over Dublin. When supplied with informations as to the several facets of the case, in her cozy-dozy bachelor's flat, quite overlooking John O'Dream's mews, leaned back in her really truly easy chair to query restfully through her vowel-threaded syllables. "Have you ever thought, reporter, that sheer greatness was his tragedy? Nevertheless, according to my considerate attitudes, for this act he should pay the full penalty, pending pursuance as per subsec 32, Section 11 of the CLA Act 1885, anything in this act to the contrary notwithstanding." Jolly Jilk began to silk, for he couldn't get home to Delsey, but ended with, "He's got the sack that helped him moult and stench of his gladsome rags." Meagre, a naval rating, seated on one of the granite cromlech sets of our new fish shambles, for the usual aerating after the ever-popular act, with whom were Questa and Puella, piquant and quoit. This one had a cold in her brain, while that felt a sink in her stomach. Wits what's wet. Was encouraged, although near vanished himself, by one of his co-affianced, to get your breath walled and gobbet, and, when chidden by her fastra sestra, to saddle up your pants Neville, thus co-replied to her other's thanks-kissing. "I lay my 2 finger buttons, fiancé Meagre," he speaks. "He was to blame about your 2 velvet thighs up Horniman's Hill, as Hook and I blame him or any other piskman. But I also think, poorly Wally, by the siege of his trousers, there was someone else behind it, you bet your bottom blarneys, about their 3 drummers down Kaiser's Lane. Trite. Be these mere marchand tailors' fablings of a race referent with oddman rags? Is now all seen, heard, then forgotten? Can it was, one is fain in this leaden age of letters now to wit, that so diversified outrages, they have still to come, were planned and partly carried out against so staunch a covenanter, if it be true that any of those recorded ever took place, for many, we trow, be yes to and denied of, are given to us by some who use the truth but sparingly, and we on this side ought to sorrow for their pricking pence on that account. the seventh city, Eurovivla, his citadel of refuge, whither, would we believe the laymen and their accounts, beyond the outbraved gales of Adriatic, changing clues with the beggarmaster, the Hegirite had fled. Silentius issuement under night's alto sonority, ship alone, a raven of the wave. Be mercy, Mara, ahi whence Rahulas. From the Ostmen stirred by on the old wick, to forget in expiating manslaughter, and, rebirthing in remerriment, out of dead sickness to divine providence. If you are looking for the builder, deep your ear on the movie tone. To league his pagan lot, palm and pat, with a pappy For mine quinn I thee gift take, and bind my hosenband I thee halter. The was to be land, a lotus land, a luxurious land, emeraldium, the peasant pastured, in which, by the fourth commandment with promise, his days apostolic were to be long, by the abundant mercy of him which thundereth from on high, murmured, would rise against him with all which in them were, franchisables and inhabitants, Astea as Agora, Helots, Felots, do him hurt, poor jink, ghostly, following bodily, as were he made a curse for them, the corruptible lay quick, all saints of incorruption of an holy nation, the common or air in garden cast away, in red resurrection to condemn, so they might convince him, first Pharaoh, Humphorus, Cheox, Exarchus, of their proper sins. Business bred to speak with a stiff upper lip to all men and most occasions, the man we wot of took little short of fighting chances, but for all that, he or his care were subjected to the horrors of the premier terror of Errorland. Perhaps. We seem to us, the real us, to be reading our Amante in the 6th sealed chapter of the Going Forth by Black. It was after the show at Wensbury that one tall man, humping a suspicious parcel, when returning late amid a dense particular on his home way from the second house of the Boer and Burgess Christie Menestrels by the old spot, Roy's Corner, had a Barkis revolver placed to his face with the words, "You're shot, Major," by an unknowable assailant, masked, against whom he had been jealous over Lotta Crabtree or Pomona Evelyn. More than that, when the waylayer, not a locally sought diocesan, or even of the Glendalough Sea, but hailing from the prow of Little Britain, mentioning in a by-the-way that he, the crosshopper, had, in addition to Reed's cutlass centiplate, a loaded Hobson's, which left only twin alternatives as, vice versa, either he would surely shoot her, the aunt, by a pistol, she could be okay sure of that, or, failing of such, bash in Patch's blank face beyond recognition, pointedly asked, with Gaelish gall, what Cap Blizzard's business Thornton had with that Kane's fender, only to be answered by the aggravated assaulted that that was the snaps for him, midweeks, to such you will go and find out, if he was showery well able. But how transparently non-true, gentle writer. His feet one is not a tall man, not at all man. No such parson, no such fender, no such lumber, no such race. Was it supposedly in connection with a girl, Myremy Huey or Colores Archer, under Flaggy Bridge? For Anne there is but one live, and her new bridge is her old. Or to explode his 12th chamber and force a shrivel re-entrance, that the heavy-built able-body in a butcher-blue blouse from One Life One Suit, a menswear store, with a most decisive bottle of single in his possession, seized after dark by the town guard at Heavy Court Emirates Temperance Gateway, was there in the gate's way. Fifthly, how true-toned, on his first time of hearing the wretch's statement that, muttering Irish, he had oh gloriously a lot too much hangers or ho show fine to drink, in the house of blazes, the parrot in hell, the orange tree, the glib, the sun, the holy lamb, and, lapse not least, in Ramit Down's ship hotel, since the morning moment he could extinguish a white thread from a black, till the engine of the laws declosed unto Murray, and was only falling Phil fluthered up against the Gatestone pier, which, with the cow's bonnet atop o' it, he parasoliquizingly false took for a caterpillar, with the purest, peaceablest intentions. Yet how lamely hobbles the hoy of his then pseudo-jokex explanation how, according to his own story, he was a process server and was merely trying to open Sosimus a bottle of stout by martially hammering his magnum bonum, the curter, the club, the sorer, the savage, against the blotchy gate, for the boots about the swan, Maurice Bean, who hastily threw on a pair of old Sir Buncamon's pants, stepped into his shoes, with nothing in his hoard but a tin teak, and came down with Humph, Stemp, and Jumpfit to the tilt yard from the wastes you sleep, in his obi-oni overclothes or choker, attracted by the noise of gunplay, said he were prize safe in bed, as he dreamed he dwelt in Mormon halls, when woken by a fourth loud snore out of his land of Bilo, while Hickstree's muse was grazing in the moonlight, by hearing hammering on the pandywank scale, emanating from the blind pig, and anything like it, Unach, Unach, in the whole history of that Mullinken Inn he never. This battering babel all over the door and side posts, he always said, was not in the very loudest like the Belzebubble of a bottle of booze, which would not rouse him out of his slumber deep, but reminded him loads more of the martial lawsy marses of foreign musicians instruments playing Delandi as Carthager on the Ragnarok to Dullen, or the overthrower to the third last days of Pompery, if anything. And that after this most mooningless nocturne, the young wren came down desperate, and the old Liphopotamus herself started clawing all over the plain, as mud as she could be, ruinating all the Boucher's shirts and the Bacchus Wishentogs, so that, be the chandelier of the Regina Jaili, they were all nigh washing the Walters off, the weltering Walters off. White? Just one moment. A pinch in time of the ideal musketeers. Alphas, Burkes, and Caramis leave Australia for the astrologeries, and for the love of Saunces and the honour of Kevins, pike Paddywhack back to Pamantal, and roll away the real world, the real world, the real world, and call all your smoke blushes Snow White and Rose Red, if you will have the real cream. Now for a strawberry frolic. Filons filouche, cherchons la flamme, fum fum, fum fum. Come on, ordinary man, Meshinsky, Scapolopoulos, Dushinascu or other, with that large, big, no-nobly head and that blanco-barebacked fiscal expression. Your matchless mutton legs getting muscle-bound from being too pulled. Nor Beery weighed stone 1001 when Hazel was a hen. Now his fat's falling fast. Therefore, chatbacks, why not yours? There are 29 sweet reasons why blossom time's the best. Elders fall for green almonds when they are raised on bruised stone root ginger, though it winters on their heads as if autumn drowned their waistbands. If you'd had pains in your hairs, you wouldn't look so orgy-bald. You'd have Collimac hairs on your lump of lead. Now listen, Mr. Lear, and stow that sweaty funny Adam's simper. Take an old geezer who calls on his skirt. Note his sleek hair, so elegant, tableau vivant. He vows her to be his own honey lamb, swears there will be pals by Sam, and share good times way down west in a guaranteed happy love nest, when May moon she shines, and they twinkle all night, combing the comet's tail upright, and shooting pop guns at the stars. cream puffs all to time. Every nice, Missy Mackenzies. For dear old grandpapa, he's gone on the Razzledar, through gazing and crazing and blazing at the stars. Compris? She wants her wardrobe to hear from above by return with cash, so as she can buy her Peter Robinson trousseau and cut a dash with Artie, Bert, or possibly Charlie Chance. Who knows? So tollol, Mr. Hunker, you're too dada for me to dance. So off she goes. And that's how half the gals in town got their bottom drawers, while grandpapa he's trying to hitch his braces onto his trousers. But old Grum, he's not so clean dippy between sweet you and yum. Not on your life, boy. Not in those trousers. Not by a large jugful. For someplace on the sly, where Furphy he isn't by, old Grum has his gal number 2. Brave wow, our Grum. And he would like to canoodle her too, some part of the time, for he's downright fond of his own number 1, but oh, he's fair mashed on Peach's number 2, so that if only he could canoodle the 2, she woo, all 3 would feel genuinely happy. It's as simple as ABC, the 2 mixers we mean, with their cherry-bum chappy, for he is simply shamming dippy. If they all were afloat in a dream lifeboat, hugging 2 by 2 in his so-do-you-do, toff for thee, missy for me, and how came you even so for farther, in his tippy, up and down dippy, tip-top tippy canoodle. Can you? Finny. Ack. With which clap, trap, and suddenment, 3 to a loaf, our mutual friends, the fender and the bottle at the gate, seem to be implicitly in the same bateau, so to singen, bearing also several of the earmarks of design. For there is in fact no use in putting a tooth in a snipery of that sort, and the amount of all those things, which has been going on once a day in and twice a day out, every other Nachtistag, among all kinds of promiscuous individuals at all ages, in private homes and rebus publicus, and all over all and elsewhere throughout secular sequence, the country over and over abroad, has been particularly stupendous. To be continued. Federals, Uniteds, Transports, Unions for exaltations of triumphant ecstasies. But resuming inquiries. Will it ever be next morning the postal unionists, officially called carriers, letter Scotch Limited, strange fate? Vier sind Gidirex hieß heit, the losel that hucks around missive mates' gummy bags, to hand in a huge chain envelope, written in 7 diverse stages of ink, from blanchissance to la vendette, every pot hook and pan crook bespaking the wisher wife, superscribed to Height and Cheek, Edenbury, Dublin, WC, and sub-penciled by yours, a laughable party, with afterwhite SAG? Will whatever will be written in Lappish language, with inbursts of Magyar, always seem sampost, black looking white and white guarding black, in that Siamix tour talk used twixt Stern Swift and Jolly Roger? Will it bright upon us, Nightle, and we plunging to our plight? Well, it might now, Merkel, so it light. Always and ever, till Cox's wife, twice Mrs. Hahn, pokes her beak into the matter with O&K after her, to see what was mutter after, will this Kiribis pouch filled with literish fragments lurk dormant in the paunch of that half-brother of a herm, a pillar box? The coffin, a triumph of the illusionist's art, at first blanch naturally taken for a hand harp. It is hard warp to distinguish Jubaby from Jabuli and either from Djibouti when all 3 have just been invented. Had been removed from the hardware premises of Ertzman and Nephew, a noted house of the Gunmost West, which in the natural course of all things continues to supply funeral requisites of every needed description. Why needed, though? Indeed needed. Wouldn't you feel like rat and fowl if you hadn't the Oscar? because the flesh brides or bride in their lily boleros won games with at the Nivi Nubi's finery ball, and your upright grooms that always come right up with you? And by jingo when they do. What else in this mortal world, now ours, when meet their night, mid their nacked, me their naked, made their naught, the hour strikes, would bring them right came back in the flesh, thumbs down, to their horses and their hashes. To proceed. We might leave that nitrescence of oxide giants to take its free of the air and just unelectrolyze that very chimerical combination, the gas bag where the water works, and try to pour some more heterocene up the almost-sphere. In the bottled Helios case continuing, long lally top kids, the special, sporting a fine breast of medals, and a conscientious scripture reader to boot in the brick and tin church round the corner, swore like a Norwegian tailor on the stand before the proper functionary that he was up against the right queer snort of a man in the Butcher of the Blues who, he continued, on last evening, after delivering some carcasses, mutton chaps and meat jutes on behalf of Messrs. Otto Sands and Eastman, Limerick, victualers, went and, with his unmitigated astonishment, he kicked at the Dun and Doris against all the runes, and, when challenged about the pretended hick, it was kick up and down with him, on his solemn, by the impudent imputed, said simply, "I a pop pie oath, Philip's captain. You did, as I so stressed before." "You are deep knee in error, sir, Madam Tompkins, let me then tell you," replied with a gentle womanly salam McPartland. The meat mam's family, and the oldest in the world except Nick, name. And Phelps was playful with his peeler, but his fizz fell. Now to the obverse. From velveteens to dimities is barely a 5-finger span, and hence these camelback excesses are thought to have been instigated by one or either of the causing causes of all, those rushy hollow heroines in their skirt sleeves, be she the Margreta, be she the Posk. Oh, because it is a horrible thing to have to say today, but one Delilah, Lupita Lorette, shortly after, in a fit of the unexpectednesses, drank carbolic with all her dear placid life before her and paled off. While the other soiled dove, that's her sister-in-love, Luperca Latouche, finding one day, while dodging chores, that she stripped teasily for binocular men, and that her jams were jimp-joyed to see each other, the notchy girlie soon found her fruitful hat too small for her, and rapidly taking time, look, she rapidly took to necking, partying and selling her spare favours in the haymow, or in lumber closets, or in the green-on at Huck. There are certain intimacies in all ladies' lover stories we just lease to imagination, or in the sweet churchyard close itself, for a bit of soft coal or an array of thin trunks, serving whom in fine that same hot coney a la zingara, which our own little Grania of the chilly red cheeks dished up to the great sire of Oscar, that son of a cool, Houri of the coast of Emerald, Ara of the excessive poke, Aslim al-Muslim, the resigned to her surrender. Did not she, come Leinster's Eve, true daughter of a Diarmid? Her pitch was 40 steps, and his perch old Cromwell's quarters. With so Valkyria license as sent many a poor pucker packing to perdition, again and again, aye and again, sfidare him, tis fido, et tis fido, et tis fido, toos, topples, stop ye, dog of a diago ye, Angelus me. And did not he, like Arco Forti, far off Bisavolo, misbrand her behaviours with iridescent hue cry of downright mean false sob lapsic dope? Torful's track. A wren of the she, a she-bean queen, a queen of pranks, a kingly man of royal mien, regally robed, exalted be his glory. He so gave, so take. Now not now. He would just a min. Suffering trumpet. He thought he want. Was? Here, oh here, living of the land. Hungrep, dead era, hark. He hear, eyes ravenous on her lippling lils. He hear her voice of day gone by. He hears. Say, say, say. But, by the bear of his prophet, he cannot answer. Up to putty till rise and shine. Nor needs none shaft ne steely from Phoenicia or Little Asia to oberlize on the spout. Neither Pobel clock, neither Folkestone, nor sunkeness in Thomas wood, to be ray how a press gangs score off the rude. The mouth that tells not will ever attract the unthinking tongue, and so long as the obscene draws theirs which hear not, so long till all earth's damnation shall the blind lead the deaf. Tat show, tawny yeeklings. The column of lumps leads the pattern of the leaves behind us. If violence to life, limb and chattels, often as not, has been the expression, direct or through an agent male, of womanhood offended, has not levy of blackmail, from the times the fairies were in it, and fain for wild earth blossoms, followed an impressive private reputation for whispered sins? Now, by memory inspired, turn wheel again to the hole of the wall, where giant blind fronts Pien Loa Moor. There was once upon a wall, and a hog wall was, and such a wall hole did exist. Ere or ire in Ireland. Or your dare's hair, or your diggin' mosses, or your hoard of ords and oriords, to garble a garden of Odin and the lost Pallades, when all the Adams ended with Aves. Amen. The Doon is theirs, and still to see for Manax, if he strikes the Luciferage, and we'll come to those bare-gazed shoe-shines, if you just shoot off a second. And let Ox be good old goggles, and Isteraster play Yesteraster. In the drama of Sorestos Darius diseased. A stone-hinged gate there was for another thing, while the Sir Optimist had bought and enlarged that shack under fair rental of 1 yearling sheep, prime, value of 6pence, and 1 small yearling goat, cadet, value of 8pence, to grow old and happy in, hog it and kid him, for the remnants of his years. And when everything was got up for the purpose, he put an applegate on the place, by no means, as some pretend, a bedstead in lieu thereof, to keep out donkeys. The pig dirt hanging from the jacks to this hour makes that clear. And just then abouts the iron gate, by old custom left open to prevent the cat from getting at the gout, was triple padlocked on him on purpose by his faithful porters, to keep him inside probably and possibly, in until he felt like sticking out his chest too far and tempting gracious Providence by a stroll on the people-late Zag day, unused as he was as yet to being freely clodded. Oh, by the by, let's we brag of praties. It ought to be always remembered in connection with what has gone before, that there was a North rumour, Herr Betreffender, out for his Zimmerholdigs, digging in number 32 at the Rum and Puncheon, branch of Dirty Dick's free house, in Laxlip, where the sockeye salmons were stopping at the time orange fasting. Prior to that, a commercial, Gorbo Tipaco, he was reeking like central oil robber. From Osterich, the USE, paying, gold save the mark, 11 in the week. Gosh, these holy Romans. And he missed the soft felt and, take this in, 6.15 of conscience money in the first deal of July, while he was swishing bees nest with blessure and swabbing brogan Irish with broken doge, making his reporterage on Der Fall Adams for the Frankfurter Zeitung a fastland pay ridicule, and constated that one had on him the Lynn O'Brien, a mal-toned lumswaller, disturbed, and wider he might should the same Zurich chicken, other he would, with 1,000 and over 1,000 tonneretters, one monkey's damages become. Now you must know, Franksman, to make a heart of glass, that the game of gaze and bandstand butchery was merely a patio-strapped tissue of threats and abuses, such as Roebuck's rough at Pinnacle's Peak and after this sort. Humphrey's unsolicited ad hoc visitor, Davy or Titus, on a Burgley's clan march from the Middle West, a highly excellent crude man about roads who knew his Bulfused mountains like a starling beard, after doing a long dance untitled to Cloudy Green, deposited his box stump on the Wait You May Want Me, after having blew some Quakers, for you, oats, in through the house king's keyhole to attract attention, bleated through the gale outside which the terror of his clothes was hog-collaring, first be the hirsute, that he would break his Bolshevigger's head for him, next be the heel-tapper, that he would break the gauge over his lanky duckling head the same way he would crack a nut with a monkey wrench, and, last of all, be the stir-abouter, that he would give him his, or the umperum's, or anybody else's, thicker than water to drink, and his bloody stepbrothers into the bucket. He demanded more wood alcohol to pitch in with, alleging that his grandfather's was all taxis, and that it was only after 10 O'Connell, and that his isba was a public oven for the sake of Irish arskaski, and then, not easily discouraged, opened the wrath floods of his artillery and went on at a wicked rate, weathering against him in mooxed metaphors from 11:30 to 2 in the afternoon, without even a luncheonette interval, for House, son of Claude, to come out, you Jew beggar, to be executed. Amen. Ear Vicar, that pattern mind, that paradigmatic ear, receptor retentive as his of Dionysus, long-suffering, although whitening under restraint in the sitted-out corner of his conservatory behind famine-built walls, his thermos flask and Ripidion flavel by his side, and a walrus whisker bristle for a tusk pick, compiled, while he mourned the flight of his wild geese, a long list, now feared in part lost, to be kept on file of all the abusive names he was called. We have been compelled for the rejoicement of Foyne Loides and the humours of Milltown, etc., by Josephine Brewster in the collision known as Contrastations with Inkerman, and so on and onward, Lacey's in Loo Water, Flea, Celestials, One Clean Turf. First Nighter, Informer, Old Fruit, Yellow Wigger, Wheat Ears, Goldie Gate, Bauxite Beauty. Yes, we've had his bananas. York's Porker, Funny Face. At Baggetty's Bend he bumped his bride. Grease with the Butter, Open Door Auspices, Cain and Abler, Ireland's Eighth Wonderful Wonder, Beat My Price, Codsoil Man, Moonface the Murderer, Hoary Hairy Hoax, Midnight Sunburst, Remove That Bible, Hebdromedary Publication, Tummer the Lame the Tyrannus, Blow Clay, Tight Before Tea Time, Read Your Panto-Joke, Acoustic Disturbance, Thinks He's Goblas the Good Duke of Argyll, W.D.'s Grace, Gibbering Bearmouth of Dublin, His Father Was a Mudsucker and She Had Him in a Growler, Burnham and Bailey, Artist, Unworthy of the Homely Protestant Religion, Terracotta, you're welcome to Waterfood. Signed the Ribbon Man. Lobster Pot Lardling, all for Arthur of this town. Hooshed the cat from the bacon. Leatherbacks Donald. The ace and deuce of paupering. O'Reilly's delight to kiss the man behind the barrel. Magog Agog. Sweat Puddlefoot. Gouty Gibellino. Loose Luther. Hatches Cock's Eggs. Model the Plan. Lock before wedlock. I divorced the husband. Tenor and a make. Go to Helena or come to Connie's. Piebald Puff Puff. Perched out of Burke's. He's none of me cousin. Barbarian. Peculiar person. Grand Owl's factotum. 12 months aristocrat. Lycanthrope. Flunky Beetle vamps the tune, letting on he's lonely. Thunder and Turf married into Clandorf. Left boot sent on approval. Cucumberer of Lord's holy ground. Stodge Arshman. Aunt Duke. Tommy Furlong's pet plagues. Archduke and Cabinger. Last past the post. Keneally won't tell thee of Nancy's gown. Scuttle to cover. Salary crab. Andy McNoon in Annie's room. All out. Twitch Bratch balls. Bombard Street Bester. Sublime Porter. A ban for the king of the Bergens, and a bomb for ye sir of all the Rutledges. Ophelim's cut price. And at number when. What he done to Castle Costello. Sleeps with feathers and ropes. It is known who sold Horace the Rattler. Enclosed find the sons of Fingal. Swayed in his falling. Wants a wife and 40 of them. Let him do the fair. Epigequeni Chimmock. Ploup goes his vessel. Ruin of the small trader. He Milkin honey beaver broker. We was a vintner. Sour rapes. Armenian atrocity. Sick fish belly up. Edomite. Man devoid of the commoner characteristics of an Irish nature. Bad Hamburg. Rap. Cuckoo handler. Dirt. Mitching daddy. Born burst feet foremost. Woolworth's worst. Asiatic philosophist. Guilty pig's bastard. Fast in the barrel. Booze in the bed. Mr. Fatmate. In custody of the police. Boal's allocutionist. Deposed. But anarchistically respectful of the liberties of the non-invasive individual, did not respond a solitary wedgeword beyond such sedentarity, though it was as easy as kiss anywhere for the passive resistant in the booth he was in to reach for the hello gripes and ring up Kimmage Outer 1767. Because, as the fundamentalist explained when at last shocked into speech, touching his wounded feelings in the fox year, the Dominican mission for the Socialist potty was on at the time, and he thought the Romish devotion known as the Holy Rosary might reform him. Gone. That more than considerably unpleasant bullocky, before he rang off, by way of final mocks for his grapes, drunkishly pegged a few Gladstones, all of a size, at the wicket in support of his words that he was not Gilfy, but, after he had so slunger-volleyed, reconnoitring through his semi-subconscious the seriousness of what he might have done had he really polished off his terrible intentions, finally caused him to change the bawling and leave down the whole groomus of Brook Pebble's pang-pung, and, having sobered up a bit, paces his ground old diablin lioned up, the flay, the phlegm, the floody fleshiner, Percy first, I'll splish the splume of them all. This black-back blocks boor brusquely put out his language, and quite quit the paleologic scene, telling how by his self-denying ordinance he had left Highland on the dissenting table, after exhorting Earwicker, or in slightly modified phraseology, Messrs or Mrs. Earwicker, Sir, his feminizable name of multitude, to come outside to Mockaloo out of that, for the honour of Cromlin, with his broody old flishguts, Gog's curse to them, so as he could Brian's slog and burst him all dizzy, you go bail, like Potts Fracture did with Kettle Flatnose, and nobody at all with Holy Famous, and built rocks over him, or if he didn't, for 32 straws, Bicacco Campbell, he didn't know what he wouldn't do for him, nor nobody else no more nor him. After which, Bartell, Martell, a Brisher, a Miller, a Stroker, a Buller, so the rage of Malbrook, playing on the least change of his Manchester's voice, the first heroic couplet from the fugual tropical, opus 11, 32. My schemes into abeyance for this time has had to fall. They bid good-bye to their thumb, and, his bandolier, his soldier, drip, drop, drap on pool or polger, wishing the toff a Philadelphian in the morning, proceeded with a Hubblefoss slouch in their slips backwards, et cour Haley, in the direction of the Duff and Dam institutions, about 10 or 1100 years lurch away in the cloudlet litten gorge of Pet's Self on the Bach. Adieu! And thus, with this Rocherly exiture of Bully Acre, came to close that last stage in the siegings round our Archie citadel, which we would like to recall, if old Nestor or Alexis would wink the word for us, as Bar-le-Duc and Dog Endoris and Bangen op Zoom. Yet he met leave to many a door beside of Oxman's wold, for so witness his chambered cairns silent, that I at browse up hill and down Coombe and on Eolithos Stroton, at Howth or at Coolock, or even at Enniskerry. A theory none too rectiligne of the evaluation of human society as the testament of the rocks from all of the dead unto some of the living. Oliver's lambs we do call them, scatterlings of a stone, and they shall be gathered unto him, their herd and paladin, as nubilets to Cumule, in that day of green men rise o. Lost leaders live, the heroes return, when, same the lightning lancer of Azava Arthur honored, some fin avant, he shall wake from earth's sleep in his valley of Briers, hard-crested Elmer, and o'er dun and dale the Wulveralver Lord, protect us, his mighty horns shall roll, O land, roll. For in those days his days shall ask of all Prohome, and call to him, all Prohome, all Prohome, and he make answer, at some, nor wink, nor wank. Anima diabolum, mene credidisti mortum? Silence was in thy fostive halls, O Truiga, when thy green woods went dry, but there will be sounds of many mirth on the night's ear ringing, when our patriarch of Cum's town to Nubble gets the pullover on his boots. Liverpool? Sot a bit of it. His brains cooled parridge, his pelt nassy, his heart's a drone, his blood streams a crawl, his puff but a piff, his extremities extremely so, fangless, palm broke, chilblamant and bald owl. Humph is in his doge. Words weigh no more to him than rain drips to Rathfern him, which we all like. Rain, when we sleep, drops, but wait until our sleeping drain stops.